Darling, you send me, I know you send me, darling, you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. First things first, I just want to apologize if my mic quality is a little low this episode. I just moved into a new studio apartment and I haven't really figured out a good setup for reducing the echo that I get. So apologies for that. I might try to fix it up in post a little bit. Also, if my voice sounds a little weird, I just got my wisdom teeth pulled and I'm kind of lisping a bit, as they say. As you can see by the project, if you've been following along in the series, I have upgraded to UE5. Now, the way I did it is I simply went to the library, I launched my UE5, and when this screen comes up, recent projects, you should actually be able to pick projects that are not even in UE5. And I went ahead and selected my 4.26 version and I hit open, and that worked fine for me. Now, this doesn't always work for everybody. There can be issues. Mine seem to transfer completely fine. But if you want to be safer about it, if you're planning on upgrading to V5, if you haven't done so, go ahead and watch this video by Shawnthebro. I checked it out a few times and it was helpful when I did run into issues with other projects. So I'll try to remember to leave the link for that in the description. Second thing, this map. I don't plan on making a map building episode because I don't have the resources. So I went ahead and imported this storage house set that I got during the free month on the marketplace. It is not free anymore, but there are plenty of free maps on there, or you can make your own. So first things first, we're going to need our zombie model and animation. So go ahead and go over to the great mixamo.com, and I was looking and I like this guy, Romero here. I haven't seen him before. I think he looks quite nice. I was kind of stuck between choosing between him and Doozy here, but I think I'm gonna go with Romero. So go ahead and select Romero, and then we're gonna go to the animations tab. And the first animation I got, it was just called Breathing Idle. Now our zombies should pretty much never be idling because COD zombies, they're constantly chasing you, but I think it's always safe to have one in there just in case, so they're never just running on ice. So I went ahead and got this one. I turned the breathing down to 0 because I figured since they're zombies, maybe they're not breathing, but I left the sway in. I thought it looked nice. So when we download this first one, we want to make sure with skin is included. And that will make sure that the actual model itself is packed into our FBX file, and this can stay as FBX binary. Now, I'm going to hit cancel because I already have this downloaded, but go ahead and hit download there. Now, the next two animations we need is one for running and one for attacking. So the running one I went with, I actually chose this, let me see if I can find it. There's some that are like made for zombies like this. I didn't really love any of them, so I actually chose this one here, which is supposed to be kind of like a drunk walk, and we want to make sure in place is checked because we're not doing root motion. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to edit this animation in the engine a bit to have the arms facing out towards you, more like a zombie walk, but I just kind of liked this staggering they have. And you can even maybe turn down the drunkenness meter a bit if it's a little too much for you. Speed and overdrive, we want to keep the same. So you can go ahead and just skip the step where we edit the animation and choose a regular zombie walk animation, but this is what I'm going to do. So we're going to hit download, and for the second one, we want to make sure without skin is chosen. We only want one FBX file to have the skin with it, otherwise, and that's just how we'll avoid, we don't want to add in the same model over and over again. So go ahead and hit download for that one too. And then lastly, the attack. And I just chose this one called Zombie Punching right here. Now, I don't really like this leg thing that's going on. This might be harder to make when we kind of mesh it with our walking file. So I'm going to turn the wind up down to 0 like that. And then it's a little slow for me. Gives you too much time to get away, I think. So I'm going to take the overdrive. I'm going to bump this up to 75. I'm going to do something like that. And I think that's what we're going to go with. So once again, download without skin, download. All right, so let's go ahead and import these into the engine. So I'm going to make a new folder called AI. And let's say import, And the first one we want to take is that breathing idle one. Now this is the one that actually has the skeleton built in. So we want to make sure skeleton is set to none because we're making a new one. It is a skeletal mesh, so keep that checked. And we do want to import the mesh, so keep that checked. We also want to make sure we import the animation with it, so check that. And create new materials. Go ahead and import. Now I'm going to get 2 errors, no smoothing group, and the animation length is not compatible. We don't have to worry about either of those, so let's just close that. And we're going to get a handful of things. So first off, I want to put these materials in a folder, so I'm going to create a new folder. And I'm just going to dunk these in here. Now our assets were named after our FBX file, which was named after the animation, so we're going to have to rename these. So this is the skeletal mesh, you can see it down there. So I'm just going to call this SK Zombie. Next is the animation itself, so I will call this one A idle, or A zombie idle. We have the physics asset. And lastly, we have the actual skeleton. So let's go ahead and open our skeletal mesh and see if it looks good. All right, everything looks like it imported well here. It's awesome. And let's check our animation. Make sure that looks good as well. And yep, it's a simple animation. He's just idling. All right, awesome. So that went all very smoothly. Actually, let's check the physics asset as well, because we're going to be using this in the future. Yeah, we might need to fix this up a bit, because this will act as the hitbox for when we shoot him. But we don't have to worry about that this episode. So let's get those other animations in. So I'm going to make a new folder for animations. And I'm going to take the one we already have and put them in there. I'm going to import the other 2 we have, so walking and punching. And this one, we do want to set the skeleton to the one we already have, the skeleton zombie, which we named it, because we're not importing a new mesh. And then animation length is fine, and everything else is fine. So import all to import both of them with the same settings. And let's just check, let's make sure these look good. We have our walking, awesome, and we have our punching. All right, looks good. Now, I'm going to very quickly do this little edit to our walking here and make the arms stick out because I think that looks really cool. So I'm just going to go to this first frame all the way, and I'm going to grab the left arm bone and just hit E for rotation. And I'm just going to do some minor adjustments to kind of make his arm poke out. So maybe left forearm too, and do this. Let's get the right arm. I'm not an animator, so it won't be perfect, but with the zombie, you don't have to make it look incredible because they're pretty fleshy and gooey anyway. So once you have all the changes you want to hit the plus key button right here. I think you have to have a bone selected for it to work, but it should add it for all the ones you adjusted. And now if we play it, his arms will be out. Now, halfway through the animation, it gets a little weird, so we can go to the part where it starts to look funky. Make more changes. Actually, that's the wrong bone. I want the left arm. Like that. That. Right arm. Up. Side. Doesn't have to be great. He is a zombie. Get another key in there. Move it forward. Let's get that left arm back up. And the right, maybe the right forearm. Like that. And this left arm's giving me more trouble than first time I did this, but you know what? It's just kind of part of the fun for me. Key. It's pretty simple in the end. It's just it's not a hard process. Add a key. And lastly, when it ends, it's not going to loop because we've been making adjustments, so it's going to cut right there. So right here, I want to fix the right forearm again. Right arm. Actually, right forearm. Okay. And then for this end part right here, we want to make sure it's the same as this first frame right here. So if we select all of the additive layer tracks we made and right click and choose edit selected curves, we have all of these changes we've just made. We can go ahead and select all of them at the first frame here, hit Control C to copy, go all the way to the last frame and hit Control V to paste. And then the first and the last frame should be the same, except it looks like the right forearm is not. I think it's just because I didn't make a key for it in the beginning. So key, add key. Okay, yeah, there we go. All right, and now let's play it. Yeah, and that makes the drunk walk look very zombie walk. All you need is that forward arm. Now I think that looks cool. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. So let's actually create our zombie character. So in the AI here, I'm going to create a new blueprint class of type character. I'm going to call this AI zombie. Let's go ahead and open them up. Add the mesh. Our zombie skeletal mesh. I'm going to bring them down about 90. Actually, I think negative 87 usually works best to keep their feet flat on the floor, and rotate him 90 degrees so he's in line with the arrow. And we can pull him out into the world, and then this is where we can kind of check the feet, make sure they're on the floor. Yeah, that looks good to me. All right, so let's make him move and chase us. So Call of Duty zombie AIs are really fairly simple. They just chase you and swipe at you. So we need three things to create an AI: a behavior tree, a blackboard, and a controller. So let's do the behavior tree first. So right click, artificial intelligence behavior tree. I'll put BT zombie. And every behavior tree needs a blackboard. So click artificial intelligence blackboard. I'll call it BB zombie. And lastly, we need a controller. So right click. This one is in blueprint class, all classes. AI controller, and go ahead and select that, and I'm going to call it AIC zombie. So let's go ahead and link the controller to the behavior tree. So open up the controller. In the event graph off begin play, we just want to run the behavior tree. And the one we want is the one created, BT zombie. Now we want to make sure our AI zombie, our character, is connected to the controller. So if we go to AI zombie self, AI controller class, choose the one we just made, AIC zombie. All right, so now our zombie reads that this is our controller runs the behavior tree, and we want the behavior tree to tell us what to do. And what we want it to do is chase our character. So to do that, we need a task. So we're going to hit new task up here, and I'm going to create a new folder for tasks. Open that up, and I'm just going to call it BT chase player. I accidentally did that in all caps. I'm not going to worry about it at the moment. So we just want him to follow us at all times. So off execute AI. We just want to cast to our player. And we just want to move to this character. So do AI move to. Now the pawn is which zombie is going to be moving, so we want to get the controlled pawn and plug that in, and then the target actor where they're trying to get to is our character. The acceptance radius is how close they'll get before they stop, so there's not like some weird jittery overlap. I find a value of 25 works pretty well. You can obviously adjust this to whatever you want, and then we want to finish the execution. So off of this, call finish execute. And let's connect that to on success as well, and make sure success is clicked. We can also duplicate this and plug it into on fail with success off, but it should never fail. So, all right, so back into our behavior tree, we have our root. Now we can't call the task directly off the root. We need a sequence or a selector or a parallel first. We're just going to go sequence for now, and a sequence just runs things one at a time if you have multiple. So what we want next is the task we just created, BT chase player. And let's go ahead and save and go back into our world. Now it won't work if we try it right now because there's no nav mesh. The character does not know how to navigate this scene. So we can add that by going up to here, volumes, nav mesh bounds volume. And if you want to preview what it looks like, you can press the P key. And then let's just scale this up to fit our scene. All right, very nice. So let's go ahead and hit play. And there comes our zombie. Awesome. So he stops when he's about 25 distance away from us. Now the reason that looks more to me than it did when I was testing this out is because one thing I forgot is I think this AI capsule is just a little too thick for how skinny our zombie is. So I'm going to change the radius down to something like 25, or honestly, maybe even like 22. Yeah, I think that's just a bit more accurate to our zombie's capsule radius, and then that'll affect how close it appears him to get. Yeah, okay. And then it'll hit us from this distance. And if you want him to get closer or farther, you can just adjust that number in the task right here. But he does look pretty weird just floating around in a T-pose, and we do have our animations, so let's go ahead and add them in. But you know what, right before we do that, let's fix his speed, because he's way too fast at the moment. So let's go into our zombie character, down to character movement right here, and by default his max walk speed is set to 600. Let's change it to something like 200. And you might have noticed, you wouldn't have noticed in the video, but if you're doing it yourself, that his turns are quite jittery at times. It's kind of hard to get a view of it because he turns pretty fast, but if we turn faster than he turns, it's just going to snap to us and it looks really weird. So to fix that, and you'll want to do this on pretty much every AI character you make because the character movement is set up for player input at first. You want to, or first go to self, and then turn off use controller rotation yaw. Then in character movement, we want to orient rotation to movement. And then we can also slow down his rotation rate a little bit. Rotation rate right here is 360. I set mine to something like 540. And it just makes him turn a little slower. You can mess with that value as well. All right, now let's get our animations in. So we need an animation blueprint to tell him how to animate. So do that in the animations folder. So right click, animation, animation blueprint. We need one for our zombie. I'm going to call it ABP zombie. We're also going to need a smooth transition between our walking and our idle state. And we can do that with a blend space 1D. Once again for our zombie, and I'm going to call this BS idle run. So go ahead and open the blend space first, and we can just drag in our idle all the way on the left side here, and our walking all the way on the right. Now if you hold down Control and move your mouse, you can see it blend between the two. I think it was Shift in UE4, not in UE5, it's now Control. Also, to make sure this is more smooth, here in the asset details horizontal axis, we can give this a name. We'll call it speed. And we'll make the maximum axis value 200, which is its maximum speed. Lastly, to make sure, and then we want to make sure this is all the way at the end after that as well. And lastly, we want to make sure the transition stays smooth in game. So I'm going to turn up the smoothing time to something like 0.25. All right, let's drop this in our animation blueprint. So APP zombie, and here in the output pose, we need a state machine. So right click and go state machine. And I'm just going to call this movement. Plug it in, open it up, and here we tell it what animation to play. Now we created a blend space instead of just a classic animation. We can plug this directly in. And if we open up the blend space, here we have our idle run with our speed. So if this is 0, he's still. Compile, we can see that. And if it's 200, he would be walking. We compile that. But we don't want to just plug in these numbers by hand. We want it to be based on his actual speed. So let's right click and promote it to a variable. We can also just call this speed. And then in the event graph, we need to get this from his real speed. So off of try get pawn owner, we can cast the zombie it's connected to. And we want to get that zombie's velocity, which returns a vector, but we need velocity in terms of a float, so we can get it by getting its length. And we can just set our speed variable to that. Now if we go ahead and connect that to our zombie character, go to the mesh, go to anim class, and just choose APP zombie, we should be able to see it fine in game. You can see him idling right here. And then once he runs toward this, you'll be walking like that. Looks great. Okay, but once he gets to this point, he just stops. And we want him to start swiping at us, right? So we need to go to our third animation, which is punching. And we actually want to create a montage for this because we want to have a little more creative control with it. So let's right click, create in a montage. Now, there's two reasons we're using a montage. The first is I only want to play this animation from the waist up so that he can be running and swiping at the same time. You need a montage to be able to do that. As well as I also want to determine when he can do damage to us in this animation. So only from like here to here rather than this whole time. So let's do the upper body first. So we want to put his upper body in a slot, and we can use this default slot, but I'm gonna go ahead and create a new one. So go to slot manager, add slot, and I'm gonna call it upper body. And I'm just gonna make sure it's set to upper body. Now he goes into a T-pose, this is just a bug. You don't have to worry about it, the animation will still work fine. And next we need to create a notify so that we can know, actually, well, now we do, close it and reopen it so he does play the animation because it'll be too hard to do it without. So we want to tell the engine he can only hit us from here to here. So to do this, we need to create a new anim notify state. So I'm going to right click, go to blueprint class, anim notify state, and create a new one. And I'm just going to call this zombie damage. Now we don't need to do anything with it yet. That'll come later. So let's go ahead and here in the notifies track on the one, we want to first find where we want it to start. I'm going to say right here, right click on this one where it says one, add notify state, and this new one we just made zombie damage. And then we can find where we want it to end right here and just drag the end to right here. So in this little bit of the animation is when he can do damage to us. But before we actually add the damage, let's add the animation. So in our behavior tree, when he gets close enough to us, we want him to swipe at us. So we can do that with we want him to swipe at us with a new task. So let's create a new task in the tasks folder, and I'm going to call it BT attack player. In it, we want to get the event execute AI, and we just want to play the montage. And the mesh we want to play it from is from the zombie that's swiping. So let's get its mesh. Oh, well, we need to cast to it first. So it knows what which one we're talking about, and then get its mesh. And plug that into our skeletal mesh component. And then we can select the montage we want to play, which is the zombie punching. And then on completed, we want to finish the execute. And we want to call that as a success. All right, so in the blackboard, we want to create a new Boolean key called in attack range. And based on whether this is true or false is whether he'll play the animation to attack us. So back in the behavior tree, we're going to switch the sequence out for a selector, which is kind of like a branch or an if statement. And then it'll either chase the player or they will attack the player like this. So we need to tell them how to do which is which, and we're going to do it with the Boolean. So right click on one, add decorator blackboard, and it's based off if in attack range is not set. So if we are not in the attack range, we're just going to chase. And let's change the observer aborts to both. So in case it changes, it'll go back up to the selector to decide again. Now we're just going to do we're just going to do the same thing for this one. Right click, add decorator blackboard, and if in attack range is set. So if he is in attack range, then we're going to play the attack player task. And then once again, observer aborts both. So once we get back out of range, it'll go back up to the selector. So lastly, we just have to tell it whether it's in attack range or not. So I'm going to do that in the controller, the AIC zombie, because I like to just handle blackboard values in there. Off the tick, we're just going to see if we are close enough to the player. So we want to get our character, and we also want to get the zombie character. which should just be the controlled pawn since we're in its control. And we can just get its distance. And we just want to check if this is less than an amount. The amount I like that I played around with is 125. And now based off this, we want to set the blackboard values. So we're going to get the blackboard first. And then we're going to set the bool value. Set value as bool. And we need to say which value are we changing, which is that one we just made. Now we have to type it in. So off the key name, we will get a literal name. And we just have to make sure the variable name is spelled the exact same here. So in attack range, in attack range. Make sure that's spelled the exact same. And we can just go ahead and plug this in directly to the bool value. So if he's less than 125 units away, we will set in attack range to true, which in the behavior tree will stop us from chasing the player and going into attack player. Now, if we were to do it right now, we wouldn't see anything. He wouldn't play the animation. And that's because it's a montage and we haven't set up our animation blueprint for montages yet. So if we go back into our anim graph right here, we have our movement going into the state machine, but we need to run it through that slot. So if you ever have a montage, you needed to run it through the correct slot. So we made a new one called upper body. So let's get that one. So it's default by default. Let's change it to upper body, and now it should be able to play the montage. So let's go ahead and test that. So great, he plays the montage when he's close enough, but you'll notice he's also sliding around on his feet if we make him walk at the same time. So half of the point of the montage was to make sure that that doesn't happen, that he only plays it from the waist up. So in order to get that working, we go back into APB, we need to blend the layers by a bone. So let's get that. And the bone that we want to blend by, we open layer setup, index, add a new branch filter, index, is our spine. There's another instance of you need to spell the bone perfectly correctly to whatever bone you want to blend it by. So spine right here. So everything above the spine will go into the blend pose as 0, and everything below it will stay as whatever we want. So I want movement for here as well, but we can't plug this into 2, so we need to cache it, which is kind of like making it a variable. And I'm not really sure why we have to do this, but it's just the way it works. And then we can call the cache as many times as we want. So plug that into normal for the waist. So the whole body will just do the regular movement state machine. And then everything from the waist up will do the normal state machine, as well as blending the montage. And we just go ahead and plug that into the result. So let's test it again. Now we stand still, should do it normally. And then if he's moving, he still walks while swiping at us. And that looks really, really nice. Great. So next we want him to actually be able to hit us, because right now he's just playing an animation. So let's go into our character, AI zombie. And what I want to do is add a sphere collision to his hand. Add sphere collision. And let's make sure it's attached to the mesh here. And then here in the parent socket, we want to add it to his right hand. Now it's way over there, but that's because we have these weird location rotations. So let's set everything back to 0. And now it's connected to his right hand. The collision is way too big, so I'm going to turn the sphere radius down to something like 10. And it's still not perfectly on his hand, so I'm going to take the Y value and do -10. Yeah, I think that's good enough for me. So as you can see, it's moving with the animation, and that will include moving with the animation when he swipes at us. And if that overlaps with us, we want to do damage. So let's have it selected, scroll down, choose on component begin overlap. if it overlaps with our character. For now, we're just going to print a string to let us know that he hit us. And I'm going to make it red and last for 5 seconds. So let's go ahead and see if we're getting that print string when he swings at us. Yeah, you can see it in the upper left. But we're getting it a lot of times. We only want to get one per swing, right? You don't want to be hit multiple times just during this animation. That's kind of unfair to the player. And that is why we have this notify here. We only want it to happen between these 2 points. So now we actually have to open up the notify. And before we add anything here, we need to go to our character. No, sorry, that's the controller of the character. And before any of this, we want to add a variable called can damage. And let's just make sure we can damage the character before doing it. Now back in the zombie damage anim notify, here in the functions tab, we want to override the begin and the end. So begin first, see if notify begin. Once the notify starts, we want to set can damage true. So we only have our mesh at the moment, so we need to get the character based off the mesh. So we'll get the owner. Cast to zombie. And set can damage to true. Okay, and then we want to make sure to turn it back off when the anim notify is finished. So override, notify end. I just copied all that, by the way, and I'm just pasting it back in. And make sure can damage is false, and hook up all of these. All right, file and save. So now, whenever we overlap with this sphere on our zombie, it will not damage us unless he is in this in these few frames of his attack animation. So let's try it again. Keep an eye on the upper left for the print strings. Hit, hit. See, we're only getting one per swing. It's looking really nice. So this video is getting a bit long, but I think we've done a great job, a really big amount for our zombie. The only thing we really don't have is being able to shoot the zombie himself and the zombie being able to damage us, and that's because we don't have health yet. So we're going to take a look at that next time, but I think we have a really good feeling AI here. I really love how this walk came out, how wobbly and gross it looks. How much he should be falling to his knees. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to make sure you don't miss the next video when it comes out. Plus, if you're interested in longer, more in-depth courses, check out my website. It just launched in the description below. I spent a very long time on it. I would really appreciate it if you went and checked it out. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.
Darling, you